On this episode of the Irish History Boys, we recall an unexpected death 100 years ago of an unexpected historical figure, a Catholic Unionist and Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland, Sir Denis Henry. And we go back 50 years to the day when increasing loyalist paramilitary activity led the British government to outlaw the UVF.
Bench bereaved. Unexpected death of the eminent Catholic Unionist Sir Denis Henry, Lord Chief Justice. The death took place yesterday of the Right Honourable Sir Denis Henry, Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland. To his colleagues in the judiciary, as well as to the members of the legal profession generally, the news of the death of the Chief Justice came as a shock, as it had not been anticipated that the illness from which he had been suffering during the past few weeks would prove fatal. He had just returned to his residence, Lisvarna, Windsor Avenue, Belfast, from Harrogate, where he had been spending his vacation on the advice of his doctor. In the beginning of the present week, his malady became more serious, and Dr. M.B. Smith and Dr. McIlwain were in constant attendance. But despite every effort, the Lord Chief Justice died at about 9 o'clock yesterday morning.
Hello, you're listening to the Irish History Boys with me, Tim McGarry.
And me, Cormac Moore.
Cormac Moore, beautifully read there, the unexpected death of an eminent Catholic Unionist, Sir Denis Henry, who I did not know about. And do you notice something? I noticed something. You left out a word. And the death took place of the Right Honourable Bart. B-A-R-T, which, did you know what that's short for? Because I didn't. I had to look this up.
I thought something like baronet.
It is a baronet.
Yeah, like Lord.
Yeah, so he's Sir Denis Henry, baronet, Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland, and he's a Catholic, which seems quite surprising to people.
Well, it is, there are Catholics and more Catholic Unionists in the South, quite a lot actually. There was you find any number of Catholic Unionists in the South, but not so much in Ulster. It was a bit of a rarity. Right. He's from Derry, and his family would have been very conservative, very Unionist leaning, and he's a fascinating character. Like, he's the first Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland, and what happened? The reason why he becomes Lord Chief Justice is because when Ireland was partitioned, so were its legal systems. Yeah. So was the judiciary.
So there were two jobs going. There was the Lord Chief Justice down south and one up north.
Exactly, yeah. Well, it was more than two jobs. Obviously, you had not just the Lord Chief Justice, but all the Lord Justices as well. And then you had the Justice of the High Court and the Justice of the Court of Appeal, and a whole range of positions. So he was... I spoke about Ernest Clark before. Remember I mentioned Ernest Clark before?
Ernie Clark, yes. He was the guy who was the civil servant who was brought over basically... had a desk and a pen and then an Act of Parliament. And he set up all the infrastructure for Northern Ireland. See, I listened to my own programme.
That's good to hear. You're the one. But so he's like Denis Henry's in many ways the judiciary equivalent of what Ernest Clark did. So Ernest Clark had to set up the machinery of a civil service, of a government basically from scratch. Denis Henry, as the Lord Chief Justice, he was the man responsible for setting up the whole judiciary, pretty much the legal system of this brand new entity of Northern Ireland. So it's a huge gargantuan task. And his son actually, because he died, he was quite young, I think he was about 61 or something when he died. His son actually said it was that kind of strain, that pressure he was under, the amount of work he had to do, of setting up this whole new legal structures in a whole new jurisdiction that actually probably kind of was one of the reasons why he died when he did die. He's from Derry. He wouldn't be a fan of nationalists really. Definitely not of the advanced type.
Right.
So he becomes an MP.
He's an Ulster Unionist MP.
For Ulster Unionist MP in May. He'd lost a couple of elections by only like a couple of votes. I think in Derry and Tyrone in 1906, 1907, and then he finally becomes an MP in May 1916, the first by-election since the Rising. And he gets elected for Ulster Unionists, and then he quickly becomes Solicitor General of Ireland, and then becomes Attorney General of Ireland, and he is in those positions while all hell is breaking loose. Right. So he's under E. Macpherson and Hammer Greenwood, the chief secretaries, when all these kind of laws are brought in, like the Restoration of Ireland Act, of Order in Ireland Act. He's responsible for that. Right. He's the one that's behind the courts martial can actually have the death penalty without a jury. This is all introduced. So Kevin Barry, you could say Kevin Barry was the 18-year-old, just a lad of 18 summers. He's executed in November 1920. When this is the first person to be executed under the Restoration of Order of Ireland Act. This is Dennis Henry's work, basically, the legal
right.
person.
Okay, so is he
behind
known
this,
as
you
a bit of a hanging judge then, is he?
Exactly. Oh yeah, and he's the right man for the North because he's a fan of law and order on the side of the establishment. So Craig, the Northern government want him, and as does Richard Best, the Northern Attorney General, and he's sworn in a Portrush town hall for some reason. Yeah. So in August 1921, and he has to set up the whole machinery. So in a previous episode, we talked about kind of the services taking a while to be transferred from to the North. Yeah. It didn't happen when Northern Ireland came into being. It took months after, but the new judiciary was to come into place by 1st of October.
Sorry, just to go back slightly, Catholic Unionist. What's his family background? Is that cause him to become a unionist?
Yeah, they were all conservative. They would have been British supporters. Yeah. Right. I don't know exactly what the father did or the family's background in terms of professions and all of that. But he was on the circuit.
An outlier then.
Completely outlier. Yeah, particularly in the Ulster. It is very rare to find a Catholic Unionist, particularly a prominent one. It's just very, very rare to find a kind of a person, particularly an elected Ulster Unionist MP. It really is a rarity. But he was on he was well known in legal circles. He was on the circuits. He was considered the father of the Northwest Circuit. Right. So Derry, Donegal, Tyrone, down as far as Westmeath.
Right.
He was
So post-partition, they had to literally set up new laws for Northern Ireland. They not just take all the British laws and say.
Well, it was
keep them. But Ireland has its own judicial system.
Yeah, and Northern Ireland has its own judicial system. Right. So it now the Imperial Parliament has overall kind of jurisdiction overall say, but obviously before that it's a Supreme Court, it's a Court of Appeals, and obviously you've got all of the lower courts as well. They all have to be set up. Right. There's no courthouse. It's like Stormont. Yeah. There's no building, so they have to use Antrim County Courthouse for up until a similar time frame to when Stormont's built. Around I think it's 33 when they built a courthouse around where the potato market was. Right. But before that, they were in Antrim County Courthouse.
The High Court's quite an impressive building in Belfast. So was built around the same time as the early 30s. Then
33 I think it opened.
Same as Stormont.
Same time frame as Stormont. But before that, it was in cramped conditions and it wasn't suitable for a kind of high court, right? A Supreme Court, and it was another kind of stick for nationalists to beat this pygmy parliament, this pygmy jurisdiction. Right. You don't even have proper court facilities. Right. It's not a proper setup, and it was a gargantuan task. There's no books, no law books. They know a lot of the documents because the Free State. Governments, the provisional governments, were particularly when Michael Collins was around, was reluctant to transfer anything to the North. Right. In every department.
Not helping you. We're not going to help you.
Exactly. Yeah. We don't recognise you, so you ain't getting nothing from us. Right. I sound like Conor McGregor there, So basically, they stopped. They withheld all these documents, legal documents, land registry documents. All withheld.
Right, because all that would have been held in Dublin.
See, to Dublin, people often wonder, was United Ireland, was Ireland ever united? It kind of was united as a single entity under British rule. Under the Acts of Union, everything came through Dublin, at Dublin Castle. It was kind of, and it was very treated very differently, say, than Scotland or Wales were. It had its own chief secretary, it had its own Lord Lieutenant, it had its own kind of administration structures in Dublin Castle, and that was fed out through the whole country. So it
was the UK, but it wasn't quite as integrated as Scotland and Wales.
Exactly, it was treated separately, and it was kind of run separately, as a separate division. So when this gets split with partition, so when the Free State government's formed, it has a lot of existing infrastructure and existing kind of departments. It just takes over. The North doesn't have any of those, so, and it doesn't have any judicial system at all. It doesn't even like the solicitors. They're under the the Incorporation Law of Ireland, or what's the body of the Law Society of Ireland? Right. Incorporated Law Society of Ireland.
I should know that because you used to be a solicitor a long time ago.
So
I didn't help you there. I was like
I was actually struggling there.
You were struggling there. The Law Society of Northern Ireland, it is, yes. It represents the solicitors.
Exactly. So it was the Incorporated Law Society of all of Ireland. Right. They didn't want to split, but the solicitors from the North did. So it becomes the Law Society of Northern Ireland. Right. So they're separated. But then the bench, though, the bar the bar actually remains integrated.
All right.
So the
All Ireland.
particularly for training to become a barrister, it's all done through King's Inns in
Right.
Dublin. So if you want to become a barrister up until early 26, you had to go through Dublin. You had to go through King's Inns.
My grandfather was a solicitor and studied in Dublin. Yeah.
In Blackhall Place,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, they become a solicitor.
So, but King's Inns was for barristers.
No, this is for solicitor. He studied down there
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
That was early 20s. No, that would have been before even 20s. Anyway, sorry.
Must
I
be before.
digress.
Given your
My grandfather. My grandfather.
I'm joking.
Joseph O'Hara. So it was all done centrally through Dublin.
Yeah, but even after partition, the King's Inns
Right.
still was where you had to qualify as a barrister, where you're going to practice in the north or the south.
Right, okay.
But then that all turned sour because the King's Inns wanted people to become fluent in Irish.
Right.
Which was a complete no-go for northern lawyers. I'd imagine for a lot of southern lawyers too. And also it was actually exempting people from having to do exams that had some war service behind them.
Right.
Now, if the unions had no problem people getting exempted for war service for the First World War, but they had a problem with people getting exempted for war service, it was the War of Independence.
Oh, right. Right. Okay.
So people like
That's
Kevin,
not the veterans they like.
yeah, exactly. So Kevin O'Higgins, for example, he gets exempted.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so and then Michael Hayes, he's Speaker of the Dáil, he gets exempted. So they decide to leave and set up their own Inns of Court in January 26 in Belfast.
Right.
Now they had tried to go to London, but London said
Yeah.
no thanks. But
Sorry, I digress slightly, but during the War of Independence, part of the campaign against the British government was setting up Republican courts, who did a lot of the work and basically undermined the British legal system as it was. Did that system of Republican courts then become the official courts, or what?
You would think that would have been the case. It would have made sense. No, they pretty much abandoned the Dáil courts and accepted.
I did not know that.
Accepted the British courts.
Right.
So yes, that was a big debate at the time because they were really successful. Of all things that Sinn Féin and the IRA did, I think, in that kind of years 1919 to 21, I think they were more successful in setting up an alternative justice system through Dáil courts, Republican courts, Sinn Féin courts, wherever you want to call
And how did they? Sorry, did they go back? Republican courts and stuff. How did they work? Were they normal lawyers who were working the courts suddenly just turned up at the Republican court? And
they had proper structures.
Right.
I don't know if they're normal lawyers, if they qualified through the. I don't know what qualifications they had. I presume some would have had legal experience. I know that like other people would have just been appointed, to the roles. But it was very, very sophisticated, very well run. And you had a Supreme Court, you had parish courts, you had district courts. You really. And the most surprising part of it was that. Obviously, you'd expect nationalists would have gone to the Dáil courts, but many unionists in the south went to Dáil courts as well because then particularly over land, if you want to get your land issue resolved, you needed to go to a Dáil court. Right. So there was loads of the British kind of run court system just collapsed. Didn't hold sessions. There was no business, and it was all run by Dáil courts. So when the Free State was formed, it inherited Dáil courts. It inherited the British led system as well.
Right.
And Cosgrave wanted to amalgamate both, but some of the personnel would have been from both, from the British run one as well as the Dáil courts. But the paraphernalia, the structures were pretty much adopted the British one. So they didn't go to robes and the kind of gowns and all of that.
Did they get rid of the wigs and the gowns? Well,
No, they
still
didn't.
have the wigs.
No, they didn't.
They kept them?
They kept those, the British kind of paraphernalia.
Right, okay.
And that's why many people were very critical of the Free State governments in the early years, saying, look, they're British basically, they're aping the British structures and look at the court system, look at the judicial system. But the main point, I suppose, we can talk about in terms of Dennis Henry is that he didn't have that luxury. He didn't have to, all of these buildings, all of these law libraries, all of the structures in place. He had to set up from scratch, even getting stamps, hiring clerks, all that stuff. He was responsible for all of that, hiring the judges, hiring all of the kind of the whole, getting the building sorted. That was all on him, so it was. As well as actually he was still hearing cases. And he was going around the north, he was sitting in the High Court, he was going around different circuits throughout the year.
He's a busy boy.
Very busy boy. And very tough as well on nationalists. So there was a number of incidents where the specials had killed Catholics, and he said no, they were just doing their job, and when others would have suggested differently, so there was there was a number of controversial decisions that he's behind, and none of them favoured.
And did nationalists immediately accept the northern courts, or did
No,
they?
of course not.
No, they just
they absolutely refused to accept the northern courts, like everything else. They didn't accept the, and they still were like the Dáil courts were not as successful in Ulster as they were in other provinces for other obvious reasons, because you needed a supportive population, and most places in Ulster there wasn't that there. So. You have to remember, like the main, say for Dáil courts, the main way of punishing someone wasn't open to them. You couldn't lock them up in prison. So it was often, sometimes going very extreme, actually executing them, or banning them in a lot of cases. So if you
exiling people,
yeah. So that was or fining people, or they're very effective in kind of land disputes.
So the IRA were the enforcer of the court's decisions, were they?
Yeah, but there was kind of the Republican police. There would be IRA members, but they were actually called the Republican police. So they were actually enforcing the Republican courts, the Dáil courts' decisions.
Right.
So that wasn't as effective in the north, in particularly in 6 counties. And particularly, obviously, in Antrim and Down, for example, but around the border areas, you would have had Dáil court sittings. Those people didn't accept
the Free
new
State
court system, or the new Northern Ireland structures.
So the Free State had Republican courts, and then they had the old British law. Did they do a Brexit and say, right, we're going to get all these together and get rid of the bad bits and create our own law, or did they? Yeah,
because they met and they wound up the Dáil courts, and that was the plan, was to kind of get an amalgamated structure based on both the Dáil and the existing British administered courts. But it definitely seemed to be a lot more like the British run system at the end. And so, but Dennis Henry, he died, so he was and actually the Ulster Unionists and the Northern government used kind of the appointment of Dennis Henry as a kind of propaganda tool, saying and the British press elements of it said, look, they're not sectarian at all. They've appointed a Catholic as the Lord Chief Justice, for God's sake, How could you call him sectarian? If you're good enough as a Catholic and you're loyal, you could go far. but after Henry died in 25, there was no one appointed to a senior judicial position until 49.
Right.
I think from 1921 to 69, out of 68 positions, only 6 of them were filled by Catholics in the judiciary. So yes, it was an anomaly, particularly for a Catholic to be an Ulster Unionist MP.
Well.
And the kind of rest of the kind of period of Stormont showed that very hard for a Catholic to do well in legal circles in the north.
My cousin's the current Lord Chief Justice.
Your cousin's Lord Chief Justice, is he?
John O'Hara.
But you were the one who laid that path open for him.
I know, exactly.
And you ended discrimination.
Exactly. I ended discrimination.
I hope he actually thanks you every day, does he?
The way I give up the law.
He pays homily to you, does he?
I'd be a lot better off if I had stuck with the law.
But Dennis Henry, he's a fascinating figure. His background obviously is consequential, but he was an
outlier. Yeah,
and he was a full blown Ulster Unionist. There was no way, and he was totally pro-British and big believer in law and order. He definitely would be more on the hawk as opposed to the dove kind of element of dealing with certain people.
Right, you wouldn't want to be up in front of him then with a name.
Well, I'd be fine, I'm sure, but you.
I'm always innocent. I would do none. Well, fascinating. I genuinely had never heard of the man, so that's nice. One of those weird little anomalies. Can we go back to 1975?
Yeah.
Which is, there's an interesting story here. September 30th, 1975, Treble UC rift widens, Craig out. The Treble UC is, of course, the United Ulster Unionist Council. We're talking about the time.
Some people say the United Ulster Unionist Coalition, but council is the correct term, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
No,
you're right. I've always said council, but I know I've seen sometimes the Irish News say coalition.
Yeah. The report in the Irish News on the September the 30th, Vanguard Unionist Party leader Mr. William Craig resigned yesterday as deputy leader of the Unionist Coalition, despite top-level efforts to heal the breach in loyalist ranks. Efforts to get him to change his mind were made at a meeting in Stormont, but later Mr. Craig confirmed he would be sending a letter of resignation to the UUUC leader, Mr. Harry West. Mr. Craig, meanwhile, will continue to lead the Vanguard Party. The other UUC deputy leader is Democratic Unionist Party chief Reverend Ian Paisley. So there's a split happening in unionism. This
Yeah.
is the time of the convention. Very quick background, 1973, Sunningdale Agreement, proposed power sharing between unionists and nationalists and a Council of Ireland. That started in January 1974. There was briefly a power sharing executive featuring Ulster Unionist Party led by Brian Faulkner, Alliance Party, SDLP. It collapsed fairly quickly in May of 74, mainly over the issue of Council of Ireland, but also power sharing was still a big issue for unionists. Following the collapse, British government go, well, what are we going to do? Violence is increasing all round. We need some sort of structure. Is there any way that the politicians in Northern Ireland can agree to run Northern Ireland as opposed to direct rule from London? And they set up this convention. There was an election to the convention. SDLP and the Ulster Unionists were elected to this convention and were to sit around and debate a future way forward.
There was a massive problem, though, from the outset, in that the vast majority of unionists who got elected were anti-power sharing.
Yeah, I think there were 47 out of 78.
Yeah, so it was dead when it began. Basically. So once that election happened, the convention was pretty much over before it began.
Yes, so this convention was then to decide what to do, and the whole issue comes down to power sharing. Forget the government of Ireland, or forget the Council of Ireland. It was all about power sharing. Would unionists agree to share power with the SDLP? And Bill Craig, who up to heretofore had been on the extreme side of things, heretofore decided that in fact it might be a good idea to allow the SDLP, if they behave themselves. I think he put very strict.
He actually did, because there was a lot of
very strict conditions
kind of
on
conditions, like on it. I don't think the SDLP would have met those.
They had
why would they?
Had to agree to maintaining the constitutional position of Northern Ireland and until the majority changed their mind.
Show loyalty, almost like it was kind of
show loyalty, support the police and support security. But even that modest proposal to allow the SDLP, constitutional nationalists, not even talking about Sinn Féin or anything like that, because they took no part in this.
Well, a lot of unions said they're all Republicans.
Well, that's part of the problem. Unionists just said that anybody who was who wasn't a unionist was basically in hock with the IRA and hand in hand with the IRA. So they trusted nobody.
But there was around the same time there was a pamphlet, a booklet actually distributed by the UUUC, the United Ulster Unionist Council, at the Tory conference that year.
Yes,
and it was basically saying anti-Catholic church, anti-GEA, anti-SDLP, and any kind of body. It considered them to be traitors' body. They were seditionist bodies. They were all like they couldn't be trusted, couldn't be given any say in running of Northern Ireland. But none of them wanted Northern Ireland to exist.
Yeah.
They wanted its downfall. So they couldn't be treated as a...
Right, so you couldn't allow them to have any say in any power whatsoever.
Yeah, so this is the same time, so it was around this time of year that it was criticised very heavily by a lot of people, But so this is when Maggie Thatcher would have been the relatively new opposition leader, and at her conference, I think it was probably her first conference leader, I'd imagine, Tory conference leader, that these booklets going around. So that was the vast majority of UUUC opinion, basically. No power sharing whatsoever. They're all the same. If you're in the Catholic Church, if you're in the SDLP, you're in the GEA, you're a seditionist. You want Northern Ireland to die a death. So you can have no say in running of this place.
It seems from 50 years on, it seems completely unrealistic that they thought, well, we're not going to share power. We'll just can we have majority rule back? Can we go back to the old Stormont? But that's
50 years on, but you have to remember this is only
3 years on
after
from when they had their own parliament.
They had a majority rule for 50 years. So they were only getting used to this. It's not that far-fetched to think. Why would they expect? Or why would they be open-minded to power sharing when they were so used to having a so good run the show, unimpeded for 50 years? So I'm not that surprised, to be honest, that they still held those views, because it took a long time, decades, in fact, to realise that.
To accept that the only way to run the place is.
Yeah, this is not a normal democracy. And it can't be run like a normal democracy. That's finally dawned on enough unionists that you could get some agreement, But that took a long time.
Well, the internal machinations are interesting, because Bill Craig was seen as a bit of an extremist.
He was an extremist.
He was the Vanguard movement. He had a massive rally of people in Ormeau Park where he threatened to liquidate the enemy.
Liquidate the enemy. That was 72, And obviously UDA as well. He was definitely the UDA and Vanguard were very close, and so was he very close in setting up of it, and in a lot of the personnel in the UDA would have been supportive of William Craig, so it was a...
It was a bit of a shock then when he had this sort of Damascene sort of conversion there. I don't know what happened.
I'm going to ask you, I don't know, what happened, do you think? What I don't know enough about William Craig to know why he did what he did. Was it like I was Saul and now I'm Paul?
I think there was a slight element of that. As I say, there's an excellent programme called Pop Goes Northern Ireland, made by the Whole of the World guy. Have you never heard of that? Look it up on YouTube.
I'm too busy looking at the Irish History Boys on YouTube.
We cover each year of the Troubles, and 75 is very interesting. There's footage of
each year, is it?
Yeah, it does each year.
Like reeling in the years.
Yeah.
You're reeling the years in the south.
Yeah, except ours is better.
Reeling years is a great problem.
There was more shooting and bombing in ours, unfortunately. But covered 69 right up to 2002. So 75 is interesting because Craig does split with the rest of the Unionists. He kind of goes, you know what, we might consider.
But why do you think that happened, though?
Well, I don't know, but we have footage of Bill Craig trying to persuade some people in an Orange Hall that this was the way forward. And he says in that, we have to look to the future. And he says in that, nobody's more hurt than I am by what's been happening the last few years. We've all been hurt, But he says, if the SDLP agree to my conditions and say that they want to help us run Northern Ireland, are we mad to tell them no, they're not welcome, that we're not going to do this? And he's
from the union's perspective, it does sound very reasonable.
It does, but he's met with the stoniest of stony faces, shall we say. I've had some bad gigs in my time, but I've had an audience like that. I would just go home and give up work forever.
Have you done that?
No, I've never happened to me. How dare you, Cormac Moore?
I'm asking a question.
How dare you even suggest that? But there's footage, and it's quite funny. In retrospect, it's kind of funny. They're just completely stony faced. They are not accepting this, and it's a small little Orange Hall, and he is going to basically pleading, this is in our best interests. And he says, we've all suffered at the violence, and I think the violence, of course, is it's hugely influential on people. You're rewarding the IRA by letting the SDLP into power. It would be the argument of a lot of unionists. And him saying, look, what's the alternative here? And the answer is that there was no alternative, because from 75 on, nothing happens until early 80s. And the violence in this year...
What was the next? Was it a forum?
There was Rolling Devolution by Jim Pryor, early 80s, 83 or something, an attempt, but it kind of fell.
But in terms of the local politicians being involved in some assembly, that was...
it was 80s, early 80s.
Yeah, the early 80s, so, it was a forum or something, wasn't it? Yeah, it was but anyway, it was
it collapsed as well. So nothing is happening. In the meantime, the violence is absolutely escalating. We just discussed this earlier in an earlier episode. 75 is a horrible year. There's so many blatantly sectarian attacks by the IRA, blatantly sectarian attacks by UVF and the UDA.
That leads on into our next one.
But this is interesting because the whole idea of Bill Craig suddenly becoming somebody who's in favour of power sharing. Yeah, and there's some story I'd heard a version that he thought Paisley was going to support him, and that Paisley then kind of stitched him up, because I
remember you had mentioned
the Vanguard Party kind of disappeared very quickly, and
which is extraordinary, isn't it?
And the DUP,
it's a massive party.
Yeah, because the DUP then became they didn't overtake the Ulster Unionist Party until another post Good Friday Agreement.
What's David Trimble's role in all of this?
David Trimble was involved in Vanguard.
Yeah,
David
exactly.
Trimble was.
So did he support Craig?
I think he supported Craig.
With power sharing?
Yes, I think he did. He did. I stand corrected, but I'm pretty sure he stood by Craig at this time. And then Craig kind of very quickly just realised that he was on his own, basically. And Vanguard.
He lived a good age as well, didn't he? Like he died in
he left. He left public life.
I
think he was a solicitor. Was he? I could be
wrong. I think he was in law, right? I'm not sure exactly what, but because I growing up, I never heard of William Craig.
Right. Bill Craig was massive, and when I was young, Bill Craig.
Yeah, but when I was young, I would remember the troubles from kind of mid 80s onwards,
right.
And I never heard of William Craig until
Well, Bill Craig was Home Secretary in the late 60s.
Terence O'Neill, he was one of the reasons why Terence O'Neill was ousted. He was sacked as a minister. He was development minister. He was Home Secretary, and he was development minister, and he was sacked, and then he left the UUP, and he was causing a lot of the trouble for within the party, the UUP party. He was causing a lot of the trouble for Terence O'Neill. And as you said, liquidate the enemy. Like, he was extremely.
In the late 60s, early 70s, we have him again in Pop Goes Nowhere about making a speech where he's far more better received, shall we say, and he's complaining about sort of civil rights and stuff like that, and interference from Britain telling the Unionists to introduce civil rights, and he goes, "We will be masters. We will not be. We will be masters of our own home, and will not be told what to do by the British government."
That's what I'm saying. We'll be masters of our own home.
So he was an extremist. And then he became, he put his head above the parapet and said maybe power sharing, and then his career collapsed in a heap shortly afterwards.
And on the same week that he resigns from the UUUC, the UVF is outlawed by Rees. So the Secretary of State, Mr. Merlyn Rees, last night signed an order outlawing the Ulster Volunteer Force from today. His decision, which was announced in a government statement this morning, followed the UVF's admission yesterday that they were responsible for most of the bloodshed and violence on Thursday, in which 12 people died and more than 40 were injured. Mr. Rees said that after the indiscriminate killings for which the organisation admitted responsibility, it had become abundantly clear that the UVF is still wedded to violence, including the murder of innocent citizens. He added, their actions are an offence against society, and in consequence they no longer have the right to be treated as members of a legitimate organisation. Earlier in the statement, Mr. Rees said that in announcing the de-proscription of the UVF in April 1974, he had made it clear that his reason for doing so was that there was indications that those people who had at one time been committed to violence wished to find a way back to political activity. He felt it had been right to encourage them as much as possible.
Yeah.
So it does beg the question: why did he de-proscribe them? In April. I know he said that he saw they were on a political path, but
in April 1974, just before the UWC strike, and the UVF responsible for the Dublin Monaghan bombings in May 74.
Well, there's a lot of players involved.
With the UVF were a prominent role in it, shall we say, whether I know there's the argument about British state involvement in that, and that still hasn't been finally resolved.
Will it ever be resolved? So it's an open story.
So they carried out awful atrocities in 74 after they were de-prescribed, which means they were technically legal. And then 75, as I say, was just horrible. I mean,
and they really know this murder triangle as well. Like, they're really starting there. Like, there's a lot of. And you notice in the letter pages in the Irish News at this time, and even a number of articles about a lot of the killings of people by loyalist paramilitaries are specifically sectarian and civilian orientated. And it probably is to put pressure on the IRA and show we're going to make this an unlivable place for Catholics in this country. And they probably say, stop your campaign, but they're like, a lot of them are psychopaths. You've got Lenny Murphy. He's just been out. These 12 people that were killed on the Tuesday or the Thursday, the 2nd of October. 4 were killed by Lenny Murphy's group.
Right.
It was a kind of between Falls and Shankill Road, and some wine shop. 4 Catholics were killed. Lenny Murphy killed 3 people himself. Lenny Murphy becomes notorious as the leader of the Shankill Butchers, and they start using the kind of knives, which was their kind of way they went about their business, and that was starting from October, November 75, when the UVF was illegal. Now, the UVF never sanctioned what Lenny Murphy was doing. He was a complete psychopath, but they didn't stop him either, and they just let him do what he wanted to do, basically.
Again, I've seen footage of that period as well. Thomas Passmore, the head of the Orange Order, describing them as savages and psychopaths, and they were a different level. But the UVF were the entire year we were running around sort of blowing up bars and shooting Catholics indiscriminately, and as you say, South Armagh was particularly bad. And the IRA were doing things as well. That the same year, the Bayardo bar, there were 5 killed.
This was only just around the same time.
It was all around that time. Tullyvallen was in September, early September. Tullyvallen, 5 Orange men killed in an Orange Hall. So it was a horrible, horrible time. And the thing about the convention is, that there was no hope. There really was. And it was Jerry Fitt was on saying if there's a vacuum, it'll be filled by people. It'll be filled by the IRA and by loyalists. And the other astonishing thing is you see some of the footage of this time is that the loyalists were kind of they were openly meeting up at Stormont, so the head of the UDA.
Well, they were legal. Up until then, they were legal for a year and a half, even though they were very clearly killing loads of innocent civilians. And yet they were legal. It's extraordinary, isn't it? It actually beggars belief. And at the same time, obviously, Rees was refusing to let go of the internees. So he was holding out. Finally ends the tournament in December. 75. So, but this has been a big campaign within nationalism since it was introduced in August 71. So it just shows like that. They seem to be really handling the whole situation really poorly in every level. They're terrified to do anything for nationalists in case unions go mad. And they're also terrified to take on loyalist paramilitaries.
I think they were afraid to take on loyalist paramilitaries. They thought they were the IRA were the bigger thret to the British state. And
that's
loyalists
obvious.
need to be pacified, and no matter how extreme they were, how awful they were kind of let go. Shall we say?
We know that the UDR, which is part of the British Army, were involved in a number of killings. And were ultimately prosecuted for killings that involved UVF with the UDR at this time. So Miami Showban is an obvious example. This happened in the end of July. 2 of those convicted of only 3 people convicted for Miami Showban were members of the UDR. So you can't just say that they were saying that loyalists were the less of two evils. There were elements of the British security force that were working with them in tandem, and this is well known. And yet they openly keep the UVF a legal organisation. It is extraordinary. Even I know, like 50 years ago, hindsight and all of this can tell you a lot of things, but I presume at the time people were going like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this is extraordinary that you have an outrageous organisation like the UVF that is a legal organisation.
Yeah, and there was kind of a feverish kind of sub-Civil War situation here. And there was no authority in Northern Ireland itself, no government in Northern Ireland, no power to look to, and nobody taking control of it. So the paramilitaries were in charge, and the unionist politicians were, to a large extent, complicit in that.
When you say complicit, what do you think?
Well, they were. Vanguard were very clearly. DUP flirted with loyalist paramilitaries during the UUUC strike. They were sitting around the table with loyalists openly.
They're part of the negotiations.
Openly with loyalist paramilitaries who they knew were carrying out killings at that time. And it's interesting, after this period, Merlyn Rees, as you say, who's the he's the Secretary of State. After 75, he finally releases all the internees.
And Roy Mason didn't take over from him, does he?
Roy Mason takes over later.
76,
But 75, they release all the internees, and then they decide that they were going to stop political status.
That was Roy Mason, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Roy Mason finally implemented it, but that was the time they said, right, what they were going to do was they were going to end political status for Republican and Loyalist prisoners, which of course the Loyalists were heavily against, by the way, of course, not just the IRA, obviously. And they were going to introduce a policy of putting the police forward regarding everything.
Take out British Army and actually
as a security issue. So regarding Northern Ireland, not as a political issue, but as a security issue and a policing issue, and then take away.
Lloyd George had that thing as well. Like he refused to call it a war.
Yes.
So it was more the policing issue, security issue. So
yes.
We're not fighting a war here. So there's no prisoner of war status.
So history repeats itself.
Exactly. Exactly.
And again, it's partly because there's a very good documentary by Michael Portillo done about the War of Independence, about the British, where there's hawks and doves. They didn't really know what they were doing. They said, okay, and then this is a perfect example of that. De-prescribing the UVF. This is insane. And then a year later, you go, all right, everybody, they're all criminals. They're all criminals. They're not political.
Just killed 12 people there, injured 40, all civilians. So maybe we might have to outlaw them again. So,
but insane things happen. And again, I hate to boast about pop because Northern Ireland, but the IRA were technically on ceasefire during this entire period. There's a famous incident where the IRA, they were mostly carrying out sectarian killings at this time and civilian, but they blew up 4 soldiers in South Armagh. And there's an interview with a very senior British officer going, it wasn't necessarily a breach of the IRA ceasefire. ceasefire because it was only one unit of the IRA, and we don't know whether this was, sanctioned by the
Could
full
be a rogue-
IRA.
could be
Could have been a
rogue.
rogue IRA,
Yeah,
and you just your head kind of go, "Are you serious?
Yeah,
This is a ceasefire." There was, it basically wasn't observed.
No,
at
it
all.
wasn't. It wasn't a ceasefire. No.
Yeah.
It was, but it was just grim times, and even like going through the Irish news at this time, you can read editorials or there's just despondency. Like there was real. I don't know. There was just no hope. Like there was no end to it. Like there's no sign of any end to it. It's just grim. It was like you could see that
There was
the long war had started essentially
Yes.
this time.
This
This is not going to end.
Yeah. This is not going to end. It's a hopeless, it kind of hopeless, and then it gets worse in '76, and then it kind of, as I say, we still don't have any government. The convention doesn't work, so there's no form of structure in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
We're direct rule. Ministers are flying in and flying out depending on who's in power in England, and don't really know what they're doing, and no connection here, and all of that. And then the violence. To be fair, it subsides like from '76. It gets with spikes.
79 when bound back.
There's spikes. There are spikes and things like that, but it kind of just is that miserable kind of period of we're fighting a war over what and where people are being killed for what. What's the purpose of this? This is going nowhere.
That kind of it takes over from the mid 70s, isn't it? In the north, that a lot of people are. And you have the peace kind of campaigns start. Become more prominent.
76
they become more prominent in the 70s.
Peace people.
But just from this week, this is a very significant week, I think, for loyalism and unionism.
Yeah.
In terms of you got a split of this kind of United Ulster Unionist Council, and then you also have the re-proscribing of the UVF. So it's a very significant week of, and it does show that things are going away from the politicians and towards the.
It's significant that the DUP become more prominent as Vanguard is kind of east to one side, and Dr. Paisley is then the voice that takes over from Bill Craig as that
he
sort of voice.
He still is a minority within unionism. Like UUP is still the
he still is. Yeah.
James Molyneux becomes not so long after, isn't he? The leader of Ulster Unionism.
I can't remember exactly when he became.
Neither do I. But you hear he's definitely
Harry West was the
leader then. Yeah. His daughter ran, didn't she, in Tyrone Fermanagh?
Did she run recently against Sinn Féin?
Against what's it, Pat Cullen? Didn't
Yeah.
Did she run against Pat Cullen?
You could be right.
Yeah, I think she did. But James Molyneux, not the most inspiring figure, was he? Or charismatic of leaders?
You might think so. I couldn't possibly call. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was Jim Mullen who described the IRA ceasefire of 1994 as the most destabilising thing that had happened. He was very upset about the IRA ceasefire because it was going to upset the apple cart, and he thought there had been a deal done and stuff like that. But he thought this is.
He was leader of.
He was the do nothing man. He was kind of say nothing, do nothing. Just
when the Northern Troubles entered my conscience, he was the leader for most of the time. Then Trimble takes over from him, and Trimble. I remember when Trimble took over, like he was a tough guy. He was. I remember him walking down with Drumcree with Paisley, and you didn't think whatever chance we had with Molyneux getting a settlement, we're not going to get it with Trimble.
Well, you were wrong.
So,
you need to bring the extremists in, and they do the deal. They do the deal, which Bill Craig tried to do, but too early. They weren't ready for it.
Maybe Trimble learned from Bill Craig.
But possibly, absolutely,
He's his mentor.
Well, he was in Vanguard.
Oh, he was. He was. That's where he started out, really, in kind of politics. Yeah.
I told you he taught me Irish landlord, didn't I?
Yeah, you did tell me that. Yeah. What was he like as a lecturer?
He was all right, but Irish landlord.
That's very phrase.
Damning with faint praise.
Yeah, he was all right.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't a huge fan of Irish landlord.
He put out his testimonial. Tim McCarry. David Trimble was all right.
There was a big thick book called Wiley's Irish Landlaw, and he knew it inside out.
Oh, I know it well.
You know it?
I don't.
No, you don't. I'll get you a copy. I'll get you.
Fine, thank you, Tim.
No, I'll get you a copy.
No, you're okay. No, you don't have to. Don't worry about it.
I'll be honest with you. I have lost my lecture notes from David Trimble lecturing me a long time ago.
Because you kept those for search. A Nobel Prize winner.
Yeah, he was in law. He was at the law department at Queen's. Same time as Mary McAleese. Funny enough.
Oh, same time as Mary McAleese. Yeah.
Both of them ran to be head of the Institute of Professional Legal Studies.
And who won it?
Mary McAleese won it, and he was very upset, and I think claimed religious discrimination. Genuine. Okay. Yeah, on the grounds of his political
I did not know
past.
that. I did not know that.
Do you see?
You see?
See, educating and informing you here, Cormac. You see?
Every day is a school day.
Partitionist as you are. What else have we got this week? Have we anything else?
Just one small little one. I found it very interesting about Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin. I like a good story about this.
As the result of a misapprehension on the part of a Los Angeles reporter, the effect of the judgment in the action recently brought by Mr. Charles Spencer Chaplin to restrain imitators of his garb and peculiar style was misinterpreted. Mr. Chaplin gained his point and did not lose, as might have been inferred from the first report. The defendants were restrained from exhibiting, etc., any motion pictures which imitated the motion pictures of the plaintiff, or in which any character used a make-up, costume and mannerisms, constituting an imitation of the plaintiff. It will thus be seen that the famous pants and the derby hat remained a property of Charlie Chaplin. And the guy who was imitated was a Mexican actor called Charles Amador, and his stage name was Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, brilliant. That was clever.
Not even trying.
Nobody would spot that one, would they? Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie Chaplin.
And he wore the wee hat.
I do love the old Charlie Chaplin movies, though.
I'm not a Chaplin fan.
No,
Laurel and Hardy for me.
Oh, Lord Hardy's
Laurel and Hardy for Charlie Chaplin.
Charlie, some of he's
The Great Dictator, yeah, okay, but no, I can't.
I loved the Kid and City of Lights. And, I thought he was great now, I must say.
Yeah.
Like, you have to put into context, like, he was one of the first, he was probably the first superstar of Hollywood,
yeah.
I would imagine, like Douglas Fairbank and Mary Pickford, they were the ones kind of set up United Artists, and first feature-length movies, like he would have been prominent in doing movies that were over an hour or an hour and 10 minutes or so. I thought he was very funny now, I must say.
Did you?
Yeah, I'd be a fan of Charlie Chaplin.
Well, it's interesting because this there's no copyright in fictional characters. You can't label a fictional character. Charlie Chaplin is obviously a fictional character. This guy was just basically stealing everything.
The tramp. No, but I think it was
specifically the tramp.
I think it was the tramp characteristics. The hat and the stick and the ballooned out pants and all of that and the shoes. Yeah, so I think this guy was literally
he was passing himself off as so the people going to see Charlie Chaplin thinking they were going to see Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure that was subconsciously that was part of his act. I'm giving him a lot of credit here, I find that interesting though. That fascinating.
Obviously, my character Da. It's happened to me loads of times.
Who
people try to steal my character.
And who do they think you're
Kenneth Branagh in the Belfast film. Kenneth Branagh in the Belfast. I'm going to call this out finally. Kenneth Branagh in the film Belfast had a character played by Jimmy Dornan.
I remember.
Played by Jimmy Dornan.
Jamie Dornan and Tim McGarry.
Hold on.
Sorry. I'm
go with me here.
Right, I'll try to.
Go with me here. You did the film Belfast about the outbreak of the Troubles in 1969, and Jimmy Dornan's character was called Pa. And why did he call him Pa? Because he knows there's only one Da in Northern Ireland. But it was too close. Lucky I didn't sue.
Kenneth Branagh, get your lawyers ready. Lawyer yourself up. That's the connection.
Which is not,
and you do look very similar. Yourself and Jamie Dornan do look very similar.
I didn't like to say. I thank you for pointing it out. Listeners on YouTube.
When is the next 50 Shades movie?
Me and Jimmy, we go to the same gym. I don't use any of the equipment, but he does. This can happen and people can steal things, but it's interesting.
But Charlie Chaplin won that case, though. He was maybe because the guy wasn't.
This guy was ripping the arse out of it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
on that note, I think we...
well, at least we lightened it up at the end.
Yeah, because it was pretty grim.
It was a bit grim, 1975. Sorry about that. But thank you very much, and join us next time. That's all for this episode of the Irish History Boys.
Until next time.